We are starting our lesson 118 for Math 5 on Friday, March 3rd. So let's look at this worksheet. Set your worksheet to the side for just a second. I want to talk to you as we begin learning about decimals and just kind of review what that means. I believe we started it a little bit last year, but I kind of want to get an overview for you so that you can put it into your mind. Do you remember at school, we have the little 1 units. They're green and they represent 1. And then if we get 10 of those, we put them into a 10 stick, which has 10 of those little green. And then once we get 100, we have our red square, and it has 100 of those squares. And it looks something like this. Okay? Well, as we start working with decimals, we're going to start working with numbers that are smaller than the 1 unit. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this little green unit, which means 1, okay, and we're going to magnify it, and we're going to break our 1 unit up. So, when you see a big square, are we talking about the 100 square with 100 units in it? No, we're talking about the 1 unit, making it bigger so that we can see what's inside. Okay, so if I took my 1 unit and I broke it up into 10 pieces, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I colored one of those. Well, we've been working with fractions, and we know that that fraction would be 1/10. Correct? Okay, so what we're going to look at is we're going to look at our place value. So I'm going to put our decimal point right here. And here, if you remember, we have the 1s, the 10s, the 100s. This 1/10 or a piece of a 10th belongs right here. Okay? This is our 10ths place. And if you remember, anytime we use TH on the end, it helps us know that it's a decimal or a fraction. Okay? So any number, if it's broken up, if our 1 unit is broken up into tenths, right? We broke it up into tenths. We would put how many are shaded in here. In this case, we only shaded 1. So this number would be 0.1. What if I went ahead and shaded 3 of those? Well, then my number would be 0 and 3/10, right? Because 3/10. Now notice when we read it, we would call this one 1, and then we would say the place value that it's in. It's in the 1/10 place, 1/10. Do you see how they sound exactly the same? Now let's look at this one. We would call this one 3, and it's in the tenths place, so 3/10. Look at this fraction, 3/10. Okay? Now, what if I took my 1 unit that I have, and instead of breaking it just into tenths, I go ahead and break it into 100 squares. So remember, I'm not looking at this one, am I? I'm looking at this one, zoomed in, and we're going to break our 1 into 100 pieces. Okay, so I need to make another line here, and this is going to be my 100ths place. Notice the TH helps us know that it's a decimal or a fraction. Okay, now let's just look at what I've got colored in here. So what I've got colored in here are, if I counted them all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 20, 30. I have 30 of these colored in. So the number for this one would be, I would say I have 30 100ths. Okay? In this case, sorry, I've got a really bad glare there, don't I? Does that help? Okay, so in this case, what if I did this though? Now I have 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. So my number would be 35 hundredths. Now notice that if I put it here in my place value, that I say the number, and then whichever number I stop on becomes the word that I use. So 35 hundredths. Okay? 35 hundredths. Now this is exciting because you finally get to use the word and, right? So if once we have whole numbers, we would call this one and. So we could say 0 and 35 hundredths. Okay? But what if I went a step farther? Now, this one's kind of hard for the mind to understand. But what if I took this one square, which is just the little corner of this one, okay? And I zoomed in on just this square, and I cut this square into 10 pieces. Do you know what I would have if I did each one of these squares? Each one of these little bitty pieces would be 1/1000ths. Okay, so there's 1,000 of these little squares. So that helps me with my next place value. I'm going to draw a line down here, which is my thousandths place. So I have my tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Now, when we count on this side, we go ones, tens, hundreds. We don't have oneths. We start at the tenths. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So then if I colored in, if I erased all of these, let's see, and I just colored in one of these, then I would fill it in right here. I only colored in one of the thousandths place. Okay, so that is in the thousandths place. So let's talk about reading a number on our place value chart. So I'm actually going to write a number underneath here so that you can see it. I'm going to write 4. You can see that also in your chart on your worksheet. So how would I read this number? Well, I would say my whole number, like nothing else was there, 4, and 659, and I ended on which place value? Thousandths. So 4 and 659 thousandths. Do you see how I read this number separately from this number? So let's try another one. Okay. 52 and 37 hundredths. 52 and 37 hundredths. Okay, so what you're going to be doing on your work today, if you look at number 1, we're going to be writing a decimal form and a fraction form. So if you look at number 1, you can see that that one is broken up into hundreds. Okay, that our 1 unit has been broken up into hundreds, and if we count them, we get 28. Okay, so my decimal answer would be 0 and 28 hundredths. Now, we also have to write the fraction. So I want you to think about what I'm saying. 28 hundredths. Now I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to write it as a fraction. 28 hundredths. Whoops. Sorry. I'm going to glare again. There we go. 28 hundredths. Do you see that fraction? Let's do number 2. Now that one is broken into what? Tenths. And we've colored in 4 of them. So we're going to color in 4 tenths. Our fraction, 4 tenths. You're going to say, Miss Gilbert, should I reduce this? No. Go ahead and leave it in this form. Okay. I want to trick you really quick. What would this decimal be? I want you to think about where the 2 ends. Does the 2 end in the tenths place or the hundredths place? Okay, so it ends in the hundredths place. So this one would be 2 hundredths, not 2 tenths. Okay, so just be really careful with that. All right, guys, go ahead and get started and Marco Polo me if you have any questions.